Welcome to the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, where there's always another secret.
Welcome back, everybody, to episode 26 of the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies. Today is March 4th, 2019, and in this episode, we are visiting a new shard world we've never been to before in Brandon's novella, 6th of the Dusk. I'm Bill, and I am joined, as always, by my fine feathered co-hosts, Amy and Jordan. Welcome, guys.
I'm happy because I actually called this one.
Done.
I thought,
Did you really?
Yeah, I was just like, it's got to be fine feathered. Come on. Since you did take Unfathomable last time.
I just, because it's Shadows from the Deep, or Shadows Beneath was the anthology, so that's what I was thinking would be great, but...
It's all right.
Well, thank you all for joining us. For those of you who do listen to the podcast recordings or watch the videos on YouTube after the fact, we would like to remind you that it is possible for you to interact with us live. Come to www.twitch.tv/innkeeperstable and join us in the chat. We record episodes every other Monday night, starting at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern. So please join us, take an active part of the discussion, be here, just make it fun.
Yep.
We'd like you.
And if you're not watching live, then you're not seeing the fact that I have an AVR today.
Well, I mean, if they watch the YouTube, they'll see that as well.
Don't focus so much on that. Just, they need to be here. We'll
Jordan?
edit out the AVR, right?
Jordan, I'm having trouble taking you seriously. There's a bird on your head.
Yeah, well, yes, clearly. It lets me, it hides me.
And what is your AVR's name, Jordan?
His name is Ganymede. He also helps me spew hot lead because I'm apparently a robot named Bastion.
Right.
Very cool. I've known this for a long time, so...
Yes, well,
But
I
guys...
self-identify as a robot.
So I'm excited because it's always nice to go to a new shard world. And I think this is actually... Well, no, we have one more that we'll be going to when we read White Sand. So but that'll... So we only have one other shard world after this that we haven't visited yet so far that Brandon has announced and such.
Yeah.
But there's something more exciting coming up next week.
Yes.
Guys, we have been doing this show for almost a full year.
Yep.
In 2 weeks, the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies will turn 1 year old. Woo. And to celebrate our March 18th show, 2 weeks from tonight, we are going to have a patron call-in show. What does that mean, Jordan?
Well, it means a couple things. One, it means a couple of you patrons I might be poking later on in the next 2 weeks to try and test this out to make sure it's not a horrible, horrible disaster.
We've never had any technical difficulties.
Never. Don't listen to episode 3. But
well, we can only listen to 2/3 of episode 3.
Yeah, well, that's a fair point. No, but tonight we're going to do a celebration. So for those of you who are watching live, you're gonna have to do it live. For everyone else who's listening, this is what we need from you. We are going to be doing a toast at the end of the stream. All of us are going to just talk about what our favorite memory of doing our first year of this podcast was like, and what our favorite moment was, and what the thing we're looking forward towards next season of Cosmere Studies that we're looking forward towards. And so you all have to do it as well. You, the good, gentle listener. Basically, what you're going to do is you're going to take a photo of whatever you're drinking. So, so get your fanciest cup. I've busted out my fancy BlizzCon Stein. We all have fancy cups. You need to get your fanciest cup or your most Cosmere aware cup. I don't know. If it talks to you, we're interested. And you need to then also share your favorite moment from the year, the thing you're looking forward to, and then you just need to tag it with hashtag SICS. That's SICS 6 1 year. That's the number 1 year.
SICS1YEAR.
Yep.
with the hashtag before.
Yeah. Preferably with
Awesome.
the hashtag so we can actually find it.
Yeah.
Definitely with the hashtag
So-
so we can actually find it.
And if you're uncertain about how to do that, I'll tweet that. I have mine ready to go right after the stream tonight. And so that'll be there. You can follow my template. I'm sure you'll be able to do it. You seem to be generally intelligent people.
Awesome. Well, of course they are. They listen to us.
Yeah.
Yeah. In
This
fact,
is
I'm
wisdom.
willing to go one further. They're highly intelligent people. And those of you who also support us on Patreon, Next Level Up. That's how we can tell.
Doc FG is asking why only one bird. It's because this isn't This isn't first of the splice. This is just spice. He's not first of the splice or anything. So, now again, so next week though, we want our patrons to call in and talk to us and geek out with us about the Cosmere. You can talk to us about the show. You can talk about the Cosmere. You can just shoot the breeze with us for a few minutes and let us get to know you.
But please don't literally shoot the breeze. I like him as a character, and it's going to be an issue.
You threw off my groove.
Look, if anyone wants to list
sorry,
that as
you
their
threw off
favorite
the
moment, I will understand.
I won't. I'm
it was
upset.
clearly our finest hour.
Okay, so next week is our 1 year anniversary. That's awesome. But this week we've got stuff to talk about. So again, this week we are talking about Six of the Dusk. As always, spoiler warning for this story, and we may drift into a couple of spoilers for other stuff on this, just because when it's for some reason Brandon's short stories always have all these little tendrils that stick into the Cosmere that we don't expect, and this one's got quite a few of them. So we'll try to be careful, but we can't make any promises.
Yeah. And we'll try and warn you.
Yeah, no, this story I think this would be the shortest actual shorts. Well, the Heart of Elantris might be short.
I think the Hope of Elantris is a little bit shorter.
Or sorry, yeah, Hope of Elantris, not Heart of Elantris. But it's only at least with the audiobook, it was only 40 minutes long or something.
Really?
Or yeah,
I thought it was about an hour to an hour and a half.
Oh, I don't know. I was doing work at the same time, work. But it was short, and I guess I remember it being slightly longer, and it's amazing how much he packs in there in world building in such a short amount of time.
Well, especially because, again, the first time I read this, I was just like, how the heck is this a Cosmere novel or novella or short story, whatever?
It's about
Cosmere
40,
thing.
It's 40 odd pages.
Okay.
At least in
Yeah,
Six of or Shadows Beneath.
It's not long. It's very, very short.
Mm-hmm.
But there really is just so much
It's a lot.
in it.
And the funny thing with me is I always think the story goes further in the plot than it actually does. It ends and I'm like, I could have sworn more happened after this. Because my brain just went off and decided that other things happened since I'd read
All right.
it.
Well, before we actually dive into what happens in the story, let's talk a little bit about how it came about.
Yes.
So, on Writing Excuses, which for those of you who aren't aware, Brandon Sanderson has a podcast along with Howard Taylor, Dan Wells, and Mary Robinette Kowal. They get together for 15 minutes each week.
We're in a hurry.
And they're not that smart.
That's right.
That's true. And they just discuss writing, and they give tips, and they talk about the writing process and the writing business, and they've been doing it for a while now, and so they've started branching out and doing interesting things just that are tied to writing. And one of the things that they did was they brainstormed a bunch of different settings and stories. And then it was at each brainstorming session, it was set to one of them to write that story. Mm-hmm. And this is the one that fell to Brandon, which is one of the interesting things about it is this is the first Cosmere piece that we've got that wasn't part of the original Cosmere outline. Mm-hmm. And so, but he did have a couple of threads that he had out there that he was able to tie it to, and thus we end up with Six of the Dusk. It's kind of neat.
It's really fun.
So for me, I actually listened to those podcasts back in the day when they were brainstorming all these stories. And if you're not if you're not interested in writing Excuses, I think is still an interesting podcast. It's made me a better reader, which is a weird thing to say, but I feel like I definitely read better after listening to them discuss the writers and their process and things
Right.
they think about. But what was interesting about it was Brandon did his first pass, and so Dan Wells, Mary Robinette Kowal, and Howard, they all gave him basically the same piece of advice, which was, you've got to stop calling him Sixth. It's weird. It's weird to say Sixth of the Dusk. It has weird mouthfeel. And
Well, and it's not just that. It's also that the word sixth could get lost in a sentence a lot more easily.
yeah,
It didn't have a noun quality to it.
it was funny because Brandon in the episode actually kind of pushed back on the idea a little bit, and then relented
That's
in
fine.
the end. But I don't know. I never really thought about the sound of something like that until they started mentioning it, which shows just how they're on a way different level than we are as readers, or maybe just me. Maybe everyone else caught on that, and I'm just an idiot. But here, I don't know. I just thought it was kind of funny. So it's like, no, sixth. It's hard to say it, and then they're all going like sixth.
Sith.
And yeah, and then none of them
can
can
slur.
Yeah, you can't. None of them can pronounce it anymore. It's weird.
Well, and then suddenly you expect Emperor Palpatine to step forward because there's a Sith up
Unlimited
there.
power, but he's got a bird on his shoulder, and he's acting like it's normal. It's kind of strange, frankly.
This is the weirdest fanfic ever. How did we end up here?
Look, Brandon's first draft got out of control. Okay.
Godless Rebel says that Dusk is Wax in a different life.
I mean, he and Vin and Wax are definitely in the running for quietest
yeah.
character.
I think Dusk wins this far beyond.
Yeah, considering where he has to work.
Well, I mean, like at one point he starts talking and his voice is scratchy because he hadn't spoken for weeks.
Yeah, and he's just like, words just felt awkward, and then like it becomes a problem for him later on in the book, and he's just gets so frustrated. He's like, I need words, and that's something that I just don't usually need.
Wax would have at least talked to himself, and Vin had her own mental
Yes.
people to talk
And
with.
Vin would have had her schizophrenia to help her.
Yeah.
Huzzah. Oh, Vin. We miss you. But yeah, so
cool.
I just love the concept of this, where they just start and they each go through the entire process of creating a story and building it from beginning to end, and then they put those stories into an anthology. And the anthology contained, I believe it was multiple versions of the story,
Yeah,
including
I can
notations from each other. And then they published it and sold it, and it was kind of awesome.
And it's the artwork on the book is some of the creepiest stuff I've ever seen.
It's
Oh,
really
it
fun.
absolutely
Yeah,
is.
they have conversations about how they're talking and discussing it, workshopping it.
Yeah, it's just really cool.
Oh, so it looks like they have 2 drafts,
Okay, that's what I thought.
2 or 3 drafts maybe.
It was like the first draft that they gave to each other, and they all workshopped it, and then they had their final draft.
Something like that. So
The other thing that was kind of interesting is that Brandon wanted to explore Polynesian culture a little bit more. He'd touched on it in the Alcatraz books and a couple of other things, but he wanted to dive in a little bit deeper, and so he pulled together this culture of people who worked an archipelago. And it was just kind of a nice touch.
No,
And it kind of ties into, there was a picture that I recently retweeted. Brandon posted a picture on his Facebook wall
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
the other day where he's sitting on this beach in Hawaii. And he just says, there's no high storms going on, but I feel like this beautiful view might be just what I need to inspire something great. And there's a picture, and you see on his laptop, it's a blank page, except for it just says, The Stormlight Archive, Book 4, Rhythm of War, by Brandon Sanderson, prologue. And it's just, I saw it, and you just sort of start squealing inside.
I'm sorry, Bill. We need to isolate that sound that Amy made.
I can do it again.
Okay.
No, that was
wasn't quite as good. It was
no
forced.
the first one. I need that. I don't know. I want that like to be like my text alert.
It's a good thing. It's a good thing we have this recorded. So
And my text alert is a lightsaber activating. It's fun.
mine is from not Twilight Princess, the newest one, Breath of the Wild. It's when you open the Hylian slate. So
Anyway.
Aren't you glad you're listening to this Nintendo Legend of Zelda podcast?
Yes.
We're so good at staying on topic.
Always.
Anyway, so this book takes place on, like we said, a new shard world we didn't know anything about. It's called First of the Sun. Very original in their naming structure. What was it that Vati says? I've always found that naming structure very descriptive.
Yeah.
And his response is just, what a pointless statement.
It's like she wastes so many words. Why does she say that? It doesn't even matter.
But First of the Sun is quite literally the first planet from the sun. And it has one moon named First of the First. Because that's how they do things in the DramaNet system, apparently.
Well, the thing that I like about that is they personify the islands and all these other things, but the actual things that they live on in the planets are actually, that's a very scientific way of naming things.
Well, except that they call people that same scientific way of naming
yeah,
things.
and that's the thing that I find interesting is the big things like people and planets have these sort of very scientific names, whereas it's the islands that get all the personification. I don't know. I thought it was sort of an interesting juxtaposition.
To be fair, that dives into a little bit of the extra Cosmere stuff.
Yeah.
Because apparently, do we want to talk about Cosmere stuff yet?
I mean, it's in the prologue.
Yeah.
This isn't what I'm talking about isn't in the prologue.
Oh, okay.
So.
Anyway,
No.
some of the islands
Okay.
have names, but they're also tied into
Yes.
theology for them.
Right. They call it the Pantheon.
Yeah.
The Pantheon Archipelago or something to that effect.
I think it's just the Pantheon.
Yeah, I guess it would. Just the Pantheon.
But
they don't waste words. They wouldn't say archipelago because they're like, well, why do you need to say that? You already know
well,
what it is.
yeah, right. But okay, so the DramaNet system. First off, we want to make sure that something make clear. I can speak. Dadgummit, that something's perfectly clear. Chronologically, in the Cosmere, this story takes place last so far of everything that's been published. To the point where it's actually takes place after all of Chris's essays in the Arcanum Unbounded.
And it's supposed to be close to when, like, Era 4?
Mistborn Era 4.
Yeah, Mistborn.
So when Chris says anything in these essays, that doesn't necessarily still hold true at this point, because time has passed since she wrote those. Plus, she may be wrong about some things. It's already been made clear that Chris is not a perfect source. She's a really, really good source.
But she's still mortal-ish. We don't know anyway.
She's prone to make mistakes.
She's an academic. Academic study. They then have to amend studies.
Exactly. But one of the things that she points out that's interesting is that there are 4 planets in the habitable zone, and 3 of these planets actually hold human life.
We only know about one of the civilizations, though.
2 civilizations on one of the planets.
2?
Well, because we've got the
Northern Interest Company.
Yeah, the Trappers and the Northern Exploration Interest Company.
Oh, see, I thought for some reason that the company was built out of the Trappers people.
I think you could say the same. Well, you could say the same as, America is made out of England.
Okay.
They're 2 cultures.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he says, at least about Vati, that she's the same, like, race as him or something like that. Because she says her accent's right.
That's true.
Yeah.
And so...
But she has an improper
name.
name.
She might be, it's like her name's wrong and she dresses impractically, but she's able to keep up and she's smart about a lot of things.
The way I thought about it was sort of more American frontier. He's the trapper, the frontiersman, and they come from the city.
Okay, that's fair.
So it's the same quote unquote culture, but they don't live anything close to anywhere close to any of each other's lives.
Yeah. Right.
He's super isolated.
Right, because like you said, it is a frontier, and he said it was like several weeks' journey on the ocean.
Although he was on his own, like, an oar-paddled boat.
He was on an outrigger, yes.
Yeah, he's a very small boat.
But that opening with just the shadow beneath, which, you know. What I just love, he has the goggles, so he goes underneath to look.
He's like it's like a mask goggle thing, because it's like his whole face that it covers.
He's just like, you idiot, you said you didn't want to see one.
And then what do? You go and look after you think it's passed.
Mm-hmm.
So.
But I found the concept of psychic seeking prey, or predators, to be very interesting.
It's like...
Oh, yes.
Well, so one thing that, when I was a teenager, I was obsessed with parapsychology and
psychology.
And no, not Peter Venkman yet, but I was very interested in it, and one of the big arguments against it is, you know, in the animal kingdom, there's always, you know, animals that do it better than us, and so if we say that there is a sixth sense, there should be some animals that actually have that and can use that, but it's not there, and you know, so it's an argument against it, and to which I, even as a kid, I'm like, well, what if we're the ones that do that, you know, because I was a teenager and I like to think of smart aleck things, but that concept of an animal that would use that phenomena always stuck with me, and so when it came in this book, I was like, ooh, it's here, and the fact that evolution has been pushed in a direction on this planet that accounts for that. And so you have animals that are smarter than they should be, like the meekers, who want to bite, who want to bite others and
bite others.
He can give them one command, pretty much.
Yeah,
and that's it.
It's basically like crappy version of Awakening. And then you have Patchy's fingers, which can simulate wounded prey to draw on the predators, so that one will kill another. And just the fact that it's all centered around, and then you have the AVR that can do the, you know, hide themselves from the predators, and it's just so all these little cool little interactions that I thought was awesome. Just the concept of it, and in typical Brandon fashion, he explores that concept and lets it sort of permeate the entire island of Patchy.
Right. I like Godless Rebel's comparison of the Meekers to, I am a stick.
Pretty much.
But I'm a stick.
They have a single thought.
Well, to be fair, they had a second thought. Food?
Food?
They got that concept down.
Yep.
But, I don't know. I loved the Meekers.
So, I'd like to take a look at Dusk, because one thing that was really interesting about Dusk, and Vati kind of explores this a little bit, is in especially old American literature, you have this trope that came to be, that has sort of, it's fallen on a lot of disfavor, particularly in recent years. It's the noble savage.
Oh, yeah.
And it feels like Dusk is kind of a, what's the word? Where you take a trope and you do away with it, or they refer to it in something in TV tropes. I can't remember what it's called, but it's basically, it's something he plays with and sort of fixes. Because, for example, when Dusk shows up, he's got a machete. He's got, you know, the charts from the ones above, and it's not this whole concept of I am super tied to nature, and, you know, it's not the whole noble savage. He's very much a pragmatist. Because
what is it when there's partway through and she's like, he realizes they could kill all these certain predators, and she's like, but wouldn't that upset you? And he's like, no.
We could get rid of all of them. Sure, it might mess up a balance, but they'll be gone.
He's like, I won't have to worry about them eating me. This is a good thing. But so that surprised me. I'd forgotten.
It was just a really interesting subversion. That's the word.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
of the trope. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's the fact that I love his way of thinking, where he's like, oh, the stupid questions. They always come here with way too many questions, and then he admits, like, the problem with himself is that he asked those questions as well. And
but only in his mind. He tries not to say them out loud.
Yeah, because he doesn't want to think things too far out, because it starts to take what is it's a simple life that he leads, And he doesn't have to worry about the ones above or, all these politics. And the world is encroaching upon him, and he's finding himself having to think these things through. And if he sits there and actually examines it, he has problems with it. Like when she brings up the fact that they're perfectly willing, the trappers are not trappers, are they called trappers?
Yeah, the trappers.
Okay, for some reason I questioned it for a second. The trappers are perfectly willing to set traps for each other to kill each other, but they won't outright attack one another. And she was so, like, when he finds what was it, First of the Skies book, and she's like taking it, and she's just like, why are you doing that? And he's like, because someone's got to take care of his birds for him. And she's like, you have a very strange way. It's like you're perfectly willing to set up traps to kill each other, but then you'll take care of each other's birds. And he's like, it's like, it shouldn't be that way. And in his head, he's like, she's right. But it was a sort of,
we do it,
But he doesn't blame the trappers. He blames Pachi.
Yeah.
It's the relationship between the trappers and Pachi is very interesting. One thing that Dusk says several times is that the trappers are Pachi's priests. And
yet it's trying to kill them all
and
the time.
they're the ones that he's trying to kill. Now there's a whole lot to dive into we'll do later on in the episode, and probably in a different episode as well, that has to do with that. But I think there's a lot to discover in that aspect. But
Pachi's complicated.
Oh, Pachi's very, very complicated.
No, it's the other thing that's interesting about it, as far as Dusk goes, is the fact that he really does understand that he is sort of the last of his kind. Like not in a Superman last son of Krypton sort of way, but very much this is dying out, and I am gonna be the last person who really lives this way. Because things are about to change, and he can feel it in his bones of all things.
He froze.
Yeah, Jordan, you froze.
Sort of
there.
Oh, did I? Okay.
He froze
there you
on the
go.
word
Okay.
change.
Okay.
Things are about to change. Sorry about that.
Okay, no worries. But yeah, he knows things are about to change, and it's just the simple fact that he doesn't want to accept it, but he's close to it. And
Well, there's his name too. I mean, he even knew from being a child that his name kind of was inferring that things are going to end with him.
Yes, he was named as almost a harbinger of the end.
yeah, his mom was oddly prophetic.
Yeah, I have a feeling there's something up with her deeper than, because for her to know that, there's something going on.
Well, she could just see the way the world's going.
Maybe, but
that would have been, I mean, because he's an adult, so it would have been several years before that, and it sounds like the development with the ones above has not been that long. And if she's part of the trapper culture, then I don't know that she would see that.
But
I would say it was somewhat prophetic. To the point where it had to be at least a little bit supernatural, I think, for it to be that strong.
We don't know enough about her, I think, to start assigning supernatural stuff.
Well, no, we
that.
can't assign anything, but that's why I just said I think there's something.
I did read in one of the Word of Brandon or something that that it's likely that people can bond with Sprend or something elsewhere other than just on Roshar, and things similar to that. And so I could see something that way.
Brandon has said that the AVR bond is very similar to the Nail bond. It's a little bit weaker, which is why you can actually pass it from one person to the next.
Yeah, it's a good deal weaker, but
well, and the AVR also remind me a bit of the Rashadium.
Yeah,
you have these essentially these animals that have grown up with Sprin or supernatural something investiture, with high amounts of investiture, and so they become something else.
It's also interesting that the two powers that we see the AVR give are very similar to allomantic abilities.
And we didn't even see all the different kinds of AVR. It sounds like there are more than just the two.
Right, but very specifically with Kokerli'i, she has essentially a copper cloud.
Yeah.
where she masks mental signatures from being detected.
Mm-hmm.
And SAC is essentially Electrum, where you see your own future.
Oh, yeah.
I still want to eventually play the Mistborn tabletop game and do a Twinborn Steel Runner Electrum Burner. I think that could be fun.
I have no idea what to say about that. So,
or you could just have 2 birds.
Why not 3?
Okay.
Like his uncle.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's considered like a standout. That's weird that he had 3, and everyone's like, "What? How can you have?" Because they were like, "How can you have 2?" And he's like, "My uncle had 3."
well, and part of that is because there's all sorts of stuff going on with the trappers that non-trappers have no idea about.
Mm-hmm.
The
like,
trappers have their secrets.
Yeah, when she gets caught in the net, like at his camp, she's like, "You're not gonna hang me upside down, like with bleeding?" And he's like, "No, that's a scary story we tell children."
That's not a thing.
Okay, I want to discuss Coker Lee real bit because I liked how every time they discuss Coker Lee is like really social, but is somehow out of place as the birds. I kept imagining Coker Lee as the really odd bird from Pixar's For the Birds short.
Oh, the giant one that's like trying to sit on the wire with all the birds.
I couldn't get that image out of my head the entire story, just going honk.
Hi guys.
I'm Coker Lee, and then all the other birds are just like, it's this
Go
one again.
away.
Honk.
Oh, man.
Which when I saw pictures that everyone's like, oh no, they're more like parrots. I'm like, that makes more sense. But in my head, I see this. Basically, it's like this, I don't know, like methed out big bird. And
What?
It's Kevin from Up.
it kind of is, yeah.
Oh, Kevin. No, what was it? The night moths? Like at first when I read,
I thought they were cats.
You did? I thought they were like some just kind of small bird, and then it almost sounds like they're more like the prehistoric birds.
See,
from when there were giant mammals around and stuff like post Ice Age.
I sort of thought of them sort of like wingless griffins, the way he described them.
And that sounds
Yeah, it kind of feels like
more accurate. For some reason, I've read this 3 or 4 times now, but it wasn't until the most recent time that I realized, oh, they have beaks. I imagine them as like giant panthers with
it feels
tough,
more
with
like
tough
that
hides.
kind of that kind of predator type from the stereotypes of how you always see the big scary cats that are getting
okay, have either of y'all ever played? There was a game. It came out on the Super Nintendo. It was called Out of This World.
Nope.
We had a
Anyway,
Sega
at the very, very beginning of the game, it just starts you off in this. It's this creepy setting, and you walk down you walk out one of the screens, and suddenly you just see the cinematic of this completely black thing that had it was sort of a cross between a bear and a giant cat, and you just see these red eyes, and that's really all you see of it. And it was just that's how I pictured the night moths, because it was just pitch black.
Yeah, I looked a little carefully when I was reading the descriptions of them, and it does make something to the effect of saying like they're birds, but they don't look quite right for birds, which makes me think of the prehistoric ones that were really freaky from all the depictions I've seen.
The move between dinosaur and bird, sort of.
The ones that have
in between,
teeth.
the ones that are like as tall as an ostrich, but their beaks are a lot bigger and they're a lot more vicious. But
No.
Yeah, they're scary.
yeah, anyway.
No, the other thing I found interesting was just all the various things, like the vines that fall down and will trap you. Remind me sort of like a giant version of the I think it's called like the honeysuckle plant. Like flies will land on it, and as they move, it causes it to bend more and more rapid.
Pitcher
up.
plants?
No, it's not a pitcher plant.
Pitcher plants, they fall in and they
Okay.
get
Yes,
stuck.
this is one. It like sticks out straight up, and if you touch it, like because they look like dew, but they're actually like sticky, like just little tiny
it.
sticky beads. And so as they move, it causes the plant to curl more and trap them more, and they just slowly digest them. For 1,000 years, it's basically a sarlacc.
In plant form.
It's a sarlick.
Do not lick. But That's probably good advice for anything on Patchy. Do not lick.
Don't lick. No.
It's true.
No, and there's all the ants and it seems like everywhere. Like they get to his camp and she's like, well, why do I need to shake out the blankets? And he's like, no, you need to do that to get the bugs off. Make sure there's no bugs and there's
shake out the blankets. Look under every single teacup.
And she's like, and she like goes to talk to him. He's like, did you do the teacups yet? And she's like, no. And he's like, go do the teacups. It's like, that is important. You need to do it now. Just do it. But he doesn't use that many words.
That's
like
something.
It was built to be tight, but Patchy liked tricks, and it's just like
I love it's a short story. The interplay between him and Vati is one of the best bits of like two character interaction that he's written.
Yeah.
Well, and some great exposition hidden within that interaction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I love they're perfect to set up how both of them know so much that the other one doesn't. And
but they still take something away from each other, though. They learn from each other.
Well, that was the thing I like. Both of them are very humble people. Like they sort of know what they don't know,
right?
And they sometimes act a bit too hasty in certain ways, but they keep surprising each other. And it was just it's a unique interaction I haven't seen him do before.
To the point where she does something foolish, and instead of just chewing her out, he gives her the speech that you would give an apprentice.
Yep.
Because he can tell she would make an amazing trapper.
Yep. And the fact that she follows like in his footsteps, she doesn't question when he's like, I'm doing the trapper thing, and she's like, I will do the trapper thing the way you tell me to do it, because I need to stay alive, and you know how to do it.
It was just a very good dichotomy between the two of them. And well, it's like how she has the spear gun, and he's just like, well, no. It reminded me very much of Buffy the Vampire Slayer. No weapon can destroy me, and she pulls out a rocket launcher. What's that thing do?
Yeah,
it destroys you. That's what.
Yeah, and then he's just like, you killed one. Yeah, that's what these things are decided to do.
We could kill them all.
We could kill them all. We've never killed one before.
Yeah, he sort of makes a jump there. Let's maybe start with just one more, just, a little bit at a time.
Yeah. And then they have to scare scare the rest off by decoy, because it calls in the rest.
So they'll go chasing the Patchy's fingers.
Okay, speaking of which, the moment where he just thinks to himself, the flower that could think, and he launches it, and I'm just sitting there, the flower can think, it's probably thinking, you jerk! Just like he launches it as it flies away.
He was like, I was happy there, and then you moved me. This is not what
just like, well, if you know that it can think, then you actually are sacrificing this thing.
Well, I actually think it's actually kind of poignant, because it's Patchy's fingers or what they shoot, and he's talking the entire time how Patchy's trying to kill them. Patchy's trying to kill them. And he's offering up these prayers to it, just like, why are you doing this? I'm trying to help you. It's like, you deserve this. It gets really bitter. Like, it very much starts turning into Kelsier cursing preservation.
Oh, yes.
And Dalinar yelling at honor, and like very much where they're cursing their god, and then he gets the exact amount of help that he needs.
I sent you.
Yeah, it's very, very Sazed and Wax, where he gives them just enough help. Now you can sit here and ask, okay, is that because Patchy's a real thing? Is it because it just so happens? It's left unclear enough in the story that
of course. Of course, it still shows that Patchy's a jerk, because how does he help him? By giving him the finger. Yeah.
And double birds.
So many innuendos. Hooray. Anyway.
Man, we're just hitting our stride. This is... You may not like it, but this is what peak performance sounds like.
This is one of those stories, though, that works out where it actually makes sense for them to get exactly what they need at exactly the time they need it in exactly the way they didn't expect to. like Brandon has mentioned in episodes of Writing Excuses and other places where he's talked, where sometimes it's a cool feeling where everything that's going on, it falls right into place, and other times it feels kind of
contrived.
Kind of contrived, exactly. But then in this one, particularly if you are looking at Pachi as a divine entity, or basically something that is worthy of these people's worship, it makes sense. He does all these things to toughen them up and prepare them for what's coming. Mm-hmm. It actually is very reminiscent of Shadows for Silence, because the relationship between Dusk and Pachi reminds me very much of the relationship between Silence and her grandmother.
Yeah, they're both very tough love.
Where she's cursing her, and at the same time thanking her for teaching her to be able to withstand this. But in this, again, cursing them in the same breath, because my gosh, how harsh can you be?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm thankful my parents never sent meat-eating birds at me.
Yeah.
That's not what your sister said.
No, don't believe her.
Oh, okay.
Whichever one it is, don't believe her.
It makes me feel like a better mother already when I compare myself to their relationships right there. I'll take that low bar right there.
But yeah. But it's just a really interesting, again, it seems sort of a theme that Brandon explores, is this tough love that really is at the root of it love. It's just hard to recognize in the hard times.
Mm-hmm. Man, the other thing that I found interesting about him was just how, while he's cursing Pachi, he's also deeply offended that they've set up a fort.
Yeah, he's like,
this place is sacred.
This is ugly. What are you doing?
And then again, he says, you deserve what they're going to do to you, Pachi. But you shouldn't be doing it. It's just such this interesting dichotomy within the same individual. And like I said, it's the same thing that we saw in Silence, is this appreciation for the lessons that they were taught, with a bitter anger at the harshness of those lessons.
Yeah, the other thing that struck me about it was just the fact that because it's how, if you were someone who doesn't talk for weeks on end, how introspective you would be.
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
And
he is the introvert of introverts.
Yeah. I found it interesting that, like, just in his conversation, quote unquote, with Vati, where she would be like, oh, we got to do this. Is that how this works? And he's like, there was a question, but she's mostly figuring it out, so I don't need to respond. Like, it's just, it's so minimal effort conversation.
Well, except that the other thing that was interesting is she didn't ask a question, so I don't need to respond. When she asks a direct question, he answers.
Mm-hmm. He doesn't ignore the question.
He doesn't ignore the question, and he doesn't try to keep secrets. It's a very interesting, almost a cultural thing, it seems like, where if you ask the question, you will get the answer. But if you don't ask the question, you're not getting anything.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And so it almost teaches you to ask the right question at the right time.
Well, so much of, like, societal conversation is hinting at things and trying to get people to respond a certain way. Like, he would be a passive aggressive person's nightmare. Malicious compliance all over the place.
Of course, a passive aggressive person would also be his nightmare. So.
Oh yeah. Have you guys heard of like the male male speech patterns versus female speech patterns?
No.
So a lot of times the big reason why men complain about how women talk, and that, like, well, why didn't she just tell me that she wanted me to unload the dishwasher or whatever, is that, I don't know if it's cultural, I don't know if it's what, but a lot of women don't want to sit there and go, I want you to empty the dishwasher. They go, well, the dishes have really been piling up, and just kind of implying it would be nice if you did it, but I don't want to directly say it because that feels too confrontational. And I can catch myself doing it sometimes. But I've had plenty of conversations with my husband where he's been like, no, just tell me straight up that that's what you want me to do. and I've gotten better at it, but there's still times that I catch myself not being as direct, and then if I do it at my kids, it's even worse because they don't pick up on it as much. My daughter
You're
picks
saying
up
kids
some
are
of
bad
it.
at... Huh.
My daughter's better at picking it up sometimes, but my son, nope. If I don't
To be
tell him
fair,
to do
she's
it
a little bit
directly,
older
he
as
doesn't
well.
do it.
But yeah.
But go ahead. So anyway, it just reminded me of that he's very much straightforward, and Vati, I don't know.
It's apparently Vati according to the audiobook.
Okay.
Which-
But the audiobook's been wrong about a lot of things. So.
There's
Yeah.
an H, so my brain went Vati.
Yeah, I like when I found out there was an H in it, it blew my mind. Because the entire time I'm just like, man, I can't believe she's going to end up becoming the bad guy in Link to the Past.
Not a Link to the Past.
Or not Link, yeah, no, so that's, what is that? Dang it.
Minish Cap?
Yeah, it's also the Four Swords, I think, as well.
I think so.
I don't know what we're talking about.
That is the second reference to Zelda games we have made today.
Oh, see, I know Zelda's like surface stuff. I don't know the deep stuff.
Right. In some of the handheld Zelda games, the villain is named Vaata Vati.
Ah, okay.
So
anyway, but yeah, it's just interesting catching when writers do a good job of simulating that same kind of speech pattern difference. And it's
Right.
not. I'm not saying all women always speak like that, but typically that seems to be the big difference in how men and women speak. Is that the women are more indirect with more implications of things, versus men are much more straightforward. But not always. So that's something
I
I've
also-
noticed.
I did like the segment where like, everything's going to hell in a handbasket, and she won't shut up. And he won't say a word, and he's like, "No, this makes sense. This is I get quieter, she gets okay, yeah, that makes sense."
Yeah, that
And
makes
just-
sense for how she is versus I get quieter, she makes more noise, because that's how she responds to stress.
I just felt that he had a lot of. I liked his observational. It's not really even humor. It's just sort of he just notices these things and just sort of suffers it. It's not a lot, but it's my life.
wow. Okay, so speaking of everything going to hell in a handbasket, let's talk about the ones above.
Oh,
Because first off, it's interesting how they're just name dropped at the very beginning, very, very subtly, when he's talking about the star charts that he has, because they were delivered by the ones above and they're more accurate than anyone's ever had. That's all we know about the ones above for quite a while, until
for a long time.
until Vadi shows up.
Well, even after, like,
Well,
it takes a
at least
little bit.
because she shows the device that she has and all that stuff. But it's just sort of so. But let's talk about the ones above. Godless Rebel is already talking about one of the main assumptions a lot of people have made, that Brandon has absolutely refused to confirm or deny. So chronologically, this takes place around the same time as Mistborn Era 4, which is going to be the spacefaring Mistborn, which first off just sounds awesome. But second off, so yeah, Brandon has basically he has refused to say yes or no whether these are Scadrians, these people, the ones above. So that's a possibility. There's also a possibility that they're just from second of the sun, third of the sun, or second of the sun or third of the sun. I think fourth of the sun is the one that's not populated, but I could be wrong.
It's not clear.
But, because they've got 2 planets within their own solar system that are occupied by humans.
So it could be that.
So it could be Southern Scadrians, because we know that that's right around the time that not Southern Scadrians necessarily, just Scadrians. But it could be Scadrians, or it could be someone else in the Cosmere. We don't know. And that's what's even more frustrating is we know that they're from another world, and we know of so many different worlds, but we have no clues which one.
I lean towards the Scadrians, but just because they have to follow rules, which makes me think of Sazed and how he would. I can see him putting down rules of you don't get, like, the equivalent of how Star Trek has the first, what is it called?
The Prime Directive.
Prime Directive.
Directive.
I can see it kind of being similar to that, and how I could see Sazed being like, no, you're not gonna just go and dump technology on people that aren't ready for it.
See,
But
here
I don't know.
here is my argument against it being Scadrians.
Okay.
Scadrian technology is very, very much tied into ferrochemy and allomancy, correct? Mm-hmm. The machine that the ones above left behind had seeds in it that the people from the eel is it eel something, I don't remember.
I don't know how
that
to
the
say
people
it.
from First to the Sun
The ukulele?
were able to start picking up on. And I feel like because allomancy and ferrochemy are not native to First to the Sun, that wouldn't come quite as naturally to them to start picking up these seeds. So I feel like it's a bit more tied into more general science, or at least raw investiture than it is to ferrochemy and allomancy. I mean, I can't say that for certain. There's all sorts of... I mean, especially considering the fact that there are at least hundreds, if not thousands of years between Era 2 and Era 4. You know, so I can't say maybe something else has come about. But we do know that it's going to be tied into... like that their FTL transportation is going to be tied to those two metallic arts.
Yeah.
Well, and who's to say it's from a single planet? Like, once you start world hopping,
Right.
you can start mixing and matching.
But the way they go about it is absolutely terrifying. It's very much the concept of you invite a vampire in, and then they can come in and out, come and go as they please.
Yeah, it's a very rules lawyery way to make it okay to come in. And what I love is that the final lesson of, is it too easy? Then think about that.
Oh, it's a great callback to the
It's
feathers.
The other moment.
Well, and
The mating
it's a very Brandon lesson to put into a
yes.
book, because that's totally that's advice for life. Does it seem too easy? It's probably wrong. Because life tends to come, and good lessons tend to come from hard things.
Yeah, from effort and everything else in time.
Don't make things harder than they have to be, but at the same time, if it
it's
seems
too
easy,
it's probably there's a
Well,
catch.
Especially because, okay, so now I want to tie into a little bit. We don't want to go into this too deep because there's basically at least another episode or two that we could go into on this subject, but a little bit into the nature of Pachi. So Brandon has said that Pachi is tied very specifically to autonomy, the shard autonomy. And it kind of makes sense that would be the way that autonomy teaches his people. He teaches them to be autonomous. He teaches them the hard lessons so that they can survive on their own by themselves.
Yeah.
And it's just sort of a really interesting concept. There are all sorts of theories and words of Brandon and stuff.
Brandon has really muddied the issue on this one.
Yes, he has, because he said things that...
He fully admitted that he muddied it too, though.
Yes. Now, there are things that he kind of contradicts himself, but he doesn't necessarily. And I think it's more, we don't know enough to recognize where he has contradicted himself, or if he has. Or because honestly, I suspect that he hasn't, but we're going with so little information that we're making assumptions that
or it's
are
so
easy
specific
to...
that we're not catching the little detail that makes the distinction, and he can't really say that because it would be spoilery, so he's not mentioning that part.
The one thing that does bug me about what the community has said, if you actually go to the Coppermind, they say that Pachi is an avatar of autonomy, and maybe he said that somewhere.
He has. I actually
did
read
you find
something
it?
today. I did. I'll need to show you somewhere else because I don't have it open.
Okay, yeah, because I couldn't find where he actually said he is a...
It was a general Reddit from 2018. There's a thread on the 17th Shard, the Word of Brandon section, where it's 2018 general Reddit, where they've pulled everything that he said on Reddit.
Jeez.
And
That's a scary rabbit hole. I don't go down.
oh yes, it's a terrifying rabbit hole.
What are you talking about? It's the scenic route.
But yeah, so we know specifically that he's tied to autonomy, and that at some point there was avatar of autonomy, because apparently autonomy can make avatars on different planets without going to them. That's also been said by Brandon.
And
Yeah,
they
that
can
got
look
into a
however
whole...
they need to look too.
Yeah, well, and it took a very weird turn because he had to then go into explain, well, autonomy's everywhere because that's how the spiritual realm works, but he's not there at the same time. And you're just like, oh, good. This makes sense. I totally follow what's happening right now.
Okay, Jordan, let's back up from the rabbit hole. We're sliding down. We're sliding in.
Okay.
But I think
slides
it's
are
such a
great.
cool idea, because that's the way training works on Pachi, and that's the way that they sort of learn to protect themselves from the ones above as well. Is they learn to recognize these traps and to just be very, very careful about who they trust and where they step.
Was I the only one when he was trying to find the right words, telling them it's like, no, it's like an ant den, it's like this, and just in the back of my head, all I can hear is Admiral Akbar. It's a trap.
I should have, but
It's a trap.
the tarp.
So yeah, this is the short story for me. It's for the birds and Admiral Akbar. I think that's the main takeaway from this.
Yeah. Now, one thing we do have to say, we have no indication whatsoever that Hoyd appears in this story at all.
I thought he was sad.
The only speculation that people have had that might tie in is that he's somehow indirectly connected to the ones above. But there is no basis. That is pure speculation. So,
It's a very insulated story. It's very tight with what it's dealing with.
Well, and it's so far in the future. Who even know if Hoyd gets that far in the future?
we know that Hoyd gets that far in the future.
We know he gets to Era 4?
Era 4 is going to have Hoyd viewpoints.
Really?
Really?
Okay.
Yes. Yes.
Oh.
Hoyd is going to be one of the
That'll be
main
really
characters of
interesting.
Era 4.
I did not realize that.
Oh my goodness.
Yes. So, yeah. But now the other thing is Brandon has explicitly stated, even though this is referred to as a shard world, it's called a minor shard world. And he has explicitly stated that there is no shard on First of the Sun at the time of this story. Even though there has been influence and stuff, the investiture that's there is a much more general kind that exists in other places, and it's just sort of a heavily invested planet, even if it's not a shard directly living there.
I could almost see it being in how the animals are seeking things by psychic means and whatever else. That might almost be how the investiture is there, is it's in the animals.
But there is apparently a shard pool, a perpendicularity, which is the Eye of Pachi.
Do we know where the Eye of Pachi is? Is it in the water?
That's the lake.
Oh.
That's the lake where
okay.
the worms are.
Oh. All right.
So,
that makes sense.
but it's apparently sort of different from most perpendicularities because, again, there isn't an actual shard there. So
yeah,
we don't really know what's going on. It's kind of
its own thing.
vague. So hopefully Brandon lives a good long life and we find out someday what's going on.
And he has lots and lots of good notes.
Yep.
Say prayers, everyone, that Brandon lives to 100. Pray to whatever God you prefer, just whichever one. Pray to Pachi. Don't care. Make it work. I just need some more effort out of you people, okay?
Anyway, all right, well, I think it's time to start moving on. And you know what that means, guys? It's time for a giveaway.
That's right, it is. I am totally ready for this.
So, Amy,
the audio
what are we
listeners.
giving away this week?
We are giving away our new logos patch, the Sandersonian Institute of Cosmere Studies, with the lovely design that Jordan made and I did on my lovely embroidering machine, where I touched a button and I made it do things, and it was great.
I did nothing.
The point is, her machine works.
It's true. It does work, and it's wonderful. So, So this month, like I said, we're giving away this patch. And so we have gathered all of our entries from our Patreon, from Facebook, from Instagram, and from Twitter, and gathered them together into a list. And I just realized that I closed that list. So...
But there were 33 people on the list. I got random.org.
You got that? Okay, good, because I didn't have that ready.
Yep. Jordan's got that up, and I am pulling my list up so that I can actually reference it, because I am totally prepared. And by totally prepared, I mean I'm going to riff for a little bit and try and do. I'm really doing awesome on this.
Rid-it-dit-dit-do.
Rid-it-dit-dit-do. Dadgummit, why are you not opening? Jordan, sing a song. Keep 'em
Oh,
entertained.
give me a beat, boy, as I free my soul. I want to get lost in your rock and roll and drift away.
I am so sorry.
I already did
So-
Rid-it-dit-dit-do. This was definitely going in an Andy Bernard direction. Lord, bear me strength.
Why is it not opening? I am so sorry for this. For some reason, it is not showing up where it should be showing up.
Is it somewhere me or Amy could see it?
It's in the Google Drive, but it's just not showing up in the place. There it is. There we go.
You got
Found it?
Yep, I found it.
As soon as we were
For
ready to
our-
go for it, it showed up.
Okay. You said
There
33,
it is.
right?
Yes, up. So there should be 1 through 33.
Okay, clicking the button. Number is 14.
14 is a patron, Evan G.
Yay!
So we will reach out to you after the podcast, get some contact information for you, and we'll get that to you as soon as possible.
Yep.
Now, for our listeners, make sure to join us for our anniversary episode in 2 weeks, because we're going to have a pretty freaking awesome announcement about some giveaways moving forward. You will not want to miss it, I promise.
I double that promise as well, too.
I third
also.
the promise, yes.
We have achieved something really, really cool to affect our giveaways for a time. Now, as always, one of the things that makes these giveaways possible, as well as the rest of the show, we want to thank our patrons, because y'all are the reason we're able to keep making the show. The show will continue to be free for everyone, but if you want to support us, even if it's just $1 or $2 per episode, please go to patreon.com/Cosmere Studies. When you become a patron, you will get immediate access to our Discord channel, where we have some of the best followers and conversations and random chats out there. So we would love to have you join us in that budding community. You can continue the discussion about the Cosmere and the show itself. You can get bonus content like the 6-7, which is a collection of 7 pieces of content that we find each week, and we want to share with you because we think it's ridiculous, funny, bizarre, strange, magnificent. And you will also get early access to any bonus content that we produce. Beyond that, our patrons are automatically entered into these giveaways. Now, they're not the only ones who can be in the giveaways. They're free to enter. You just need to go to our social media pages to enter those, but our patrons get 1 entry automatically. And then, of course, you help us to keep making the show, make it a better show, improve the quality of the episodes, hopefully even start doing it more frequently than every other week. And as we get more patrons, we're also going to be able to invest in better equipment to improve the audio and video for our listeners and viewers and just make things better. And this week, ironically enough, the patron that we would like to thank is Evan G, who just happened to win this week's
Wait,
contest.
really?
Yes.
Yeah, I
Oh,
saw that.
wow.
I was like, oh, wow, he won.
So-
Awesome.
I just thought you had edited the notes really fast. I was impressed.
No,
Nope.
no, I did put him in the winner spot, but yeah.
Yep. And then, of course, to all of our current and the past patrons, just thank you for being here, because you help us keep making the show. Now, as Jordan mentioned, it is time to say goodbye. We're closing out our first year tonight.
First season, because that makes it sound cooler and more
We're
official.
closing out season 1.
Yes.
So thank you for being here for the season finale. Yes, I got to say finale. That's a French word.
It is. So we're each going to go through. We're each going to say our favorite moment, and obviously show off your cup and what you're looking forward for next year.
Okay.
And I want to go last.
Jordan wants to go last. Amy, do you want to lead us off?
Okay. I had a really hard time picking, but you guys helped me decide because there were lots of moments that I thought were really cool. But so the moment that I thought was really cool was when I named my first episode, which was the Cream Sheep. I don't remember which episode number it was, but it was Warbreaker. So that was just kind of fun. So talking about my family apparently helps me name episodes.
I just love how excited you were when it happened.
I know. I rewatched it. I was like, wow, I was so happy. Look at me go there. And I always feel weird watching myself in recordings anyway, because your voice sounds different from your own hearing, and then it's just weird. But going forward, I feel like totally selfish in everything I keep talking about. But what I think would be really cool is if I could make a Cosmere related costume and have it fit in with something somehow. I mean, because I did make the spear. I have plans to do Shalon and Vin and other things, but I haven't actually made a whole lot of progress that way. And it would be fun to have something that I could be like, look, you patrons helped make it happen, or whatever else. I don't know. Anyway, so something cosplay related because I feel obligated.
Awesome. For me, my favorite moment from the past year, from the past season, from the podcast so far, was the very first time we got a patron who was not somebody that we knew before we made the podcast. And to that person, he is known simply in our Discord as Rob. We want to thank you for being our first patron and just giving us that little bit of validation that, hey, people are listening, that what we're doing is worthwhile and people care about it. It was just a really validating moment. So, here's to you. And looking forward, I'm really looking forward to interacting with the audience a lot more in getting emails and the aluminum foil hat theory shows, and in call-in episodes especially. I think that's going to be a lot of fun where we actually get to talk to you, and it makes things feel more real, and just connecting with the people who, for one reason or another, have decided to tune in and listen to our thoughts about the Cosmere. So that's what I'm excited about.
So for me, my favorite part of the first season actually predates the season. I don't think we've told the story of how the podcast actually came to be on the show itself.
We may have. I don't know.
So it started not this Christmas, but 2 Christmases ago. Bill was off visiting family, and so the only 2 people in the house were me and our roommate Matt, who is about as talkative as Six of the Dusk is. But he had just finished up Bands of Mourning. And so he basically was just like, Jordan, are you busy? And I'm like, no. Because and I was kind of busy. I didn't know what I was walking into. It was a trap. And he just had to, go off because he had just finished Bands of Mourning and someone had just said survive. And then I looked up and 2.5 hours had passed, and I was like, man, I immediately thought back to all the times that me and Bill had gotten sucked into various, conversations based on Brandon's books, and it just hit me as I sat there at the doorframe, because I've been listening to a bunch of people's podcasts of various fandoms of things I liked, and it just struck me, we should do a podcast about this. And Matt just sort of looked at me and was like, you should. And so I messaged Bill, let Bill know that I had this idea, and Bill was like, you should. And I started just sort of talking to other friends, just, floating the idea out.
I didn't say you should, I said we should.
But, okay, look, I was riffing. We're not burning the workshop down. But just every time I brought it up to someone who, was interested in this stuff, that at every level, people have been giving us encouragement and saying, no, this is something I'm interested in. I wish there was something like that. And since I've learned that, there are other podcasts that deal with the Cosmere. And I think, things like the 17th Shard and Cosmic Conversations and Mistborn Spoilers are great things to check out. And to those who are, also podcasts that I forgot to mention, I apologize. But no, seriously, it's good to check them all out. But it's been fun for us to figure this thing out. And so for me, the making of the podcast and the starting of it was my favorite part of the year, because once we actually got that first episode, it was real. And if I was going to say my second favorite part, it was going to be getting a spinning logo and then needing to change that logo, and I'm hoping to have a spinning logo again for season 2. But it turns out I don't remember how I did this. But this is why it's important to keep up your skills, kids. It turns out After Effects is not easy. But no, so that was my favorite part of the year. The part I'm looking forward to being able to get into the more modern stuff in the Stormlight Archive. I'm a sucker for fight scenes. Brandon's the only writer I've ever read that can make a fight scene in a literary form feel awesome. And there's a few coming up that I am just positively drooling over. And so,
yeah.
To that, I say we raise our glasses. I have my BlizzCon 2014 mug, or stein. You can tell because it has this and makes this sound. And it's so heavy that I have to be careful how much I tip it back, because I can't actually feel where the liquid is. So this could be fun.
I have my Hearthstone stein, Innkeeper stein, that was given me by Jordan, actually.
Yeah, he sounds like a cool guy.
I have a mug that has a picture of Freya, or a drawing of Freya, that was put on there, and I got it as a gift from a friend named Ben. So
very
that's
cool.
my pretty mug.
So,
all right.
To a year of more secrets.
Yes.
Scumps.
Soda's good. My soda of the week.
So thank y'all for being here. Honestly, y'all are amazing. Again, we are starting to save up aluminum foil hat theories and questions from our listeners, because we are planning to start doing occasional aluminum foil hat episodes where we go through a mailbag from our listeners and discuss your theories about what's going on in the Cosmere, what Brandon's thinking, what we might expect, what could happen, what won't happen, all sorts of things. The kind of things that when you talk about them in public, it makes you sound crazy. So please send us your theories, send us your questions, your comments, anything. Just contact us at cosmerestudies@gmail.com. Of course, outside of the Sandersonian Institute, we each have our own personal projects. Amy, why don't you start us off this time? Where can we find you?
I'm on Facebook at Coincidence Cosplay and Props, and on Twitter at Coincidence Cosp, because my name is too long, and on Instagram at Coincidence __ cosplay. Someday I'll say that correctly. I haven't been making too much recently because I've been trying to sell plush D20s, and so I put up pictures of that occasionally, and I'm almost done making my fourth Hobbs. And I don't want to make any more because it's really a pain. But yeah, so I'm really close to making that, and then I'm going to start working on fun things again. So yeah.
Cool.
So that's what I've been doing.
How about you, Jordan?
I am doing more Amiibo streaming, of course, on Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday morning. But thanks to my Twitch viewers, we are actually branching out a bit. I put a goal of getting 16 subs last month, because we got a new emote at 15, and 16 is a more important number, as everyone here knows. And then we had an insane day where everyone decided suddenly that they were just going to gift everyone else subs, and we started the day at 10 and we ended at 26. So we got all of them in one day.
Wow.
And it so now we got new emotes, and now I actually have to play Pokemon Let's Go Eevee. Because I let all my viewers vote between Let's Go Eevee or Let's Go Pikachu, and Eevee won with all but one votes because apparently all my listeners are Pokemon hipsters, which I didn't think was a term.
But Eevee's so cute. It's a good thing, right?
It's true.
Oh yeah.
Pikachu's cute too.
In another news, it's just horrible that Ryan Reynolds is making me so excited for a movie called Detective Pikachu, and I don't know.
Amazing.
I don't like. I'm uncomfortable with how excited I am for this.
It's so
It looks unbelievably amazing. I did not expect to say that about a Pokemon
and
movie.
I feel sad
but oh
because
my
my children
gosh,
won't be
I'm
able
so
to watch
excited.
it. It's not going to be something for a 6-year-old, I don't think.
No, it's a grown-up.
Yeah, which I'm like, they're like, oh, there's a Pokemon movie. I'm like, it's not for you kids, sorry.
All
I
know is that I didn't realize I needed caffeine-addled Pikachu in my life, but it's all I want now, and I'm uncomfortable. I don't want to love this.
Anyway, when I am not here, I am writing board game reviews over at the Innkeeper's Table at www.innkeeperstable.com. Now, this last weekend, I just attended SaltCon, which is a huge board game convention in Utah, and I posted a bunch of stuff about the con and lots of the games I saw on my social media accounts, so go check those out on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Innkeeper's Table. For those of you who can't become patrons just yet, of course, please consider heading over to iTunes and giving us a 5-star review. It'll really help us out. Before we close the episode, Amy and Jordan, do y'all have any final thoughts about Six of the Dusk?
It was a very fun read, and I always forget that it's so short, because I totally thought that he went past, like he went into the camp. But he doesn't actually. It ends with him about to go into the camp, and I was like, but it's over? I was so sure that he went in.
My final thought is I would love for Brandon to tell us just a few more birds and what they do. But
Or have
of
somebody
course,
show up with a bird, randomly or something like that. That would be fun.
Yes, randomly.
Yes.
Well, and what does the one do that we see on Roshar? Because there's a bird.
There is a bird. Oh my goodness.
There's somebody with a bird on Roshar, and
There's
I want to
two people
know what
with birds
it
on
does.
Roshar.
Yeah, there's 2.
But I want to know what they do, Jordan.
Oh my goodness. It totally
No,
didn't make
that
the connection.
that was for me something that, because I had read Six of the Dusk and then I read Words of Radiance, or not then Oathbringer. I think that's the first time he shows up, right?
No,
With
so
the
Words of Radiance.
with the bird. I mean,
I thought it was in Words of Radiance. No, it's not the first one, but I thought it was in Words of Radiance.
I don't know,
thought there
but
was-
I just
I remember
remember
it was in the training.
It's what I had read right before, whichever one it was, and then he shows up with that, and I'm also just like, because they keep calling it a chicken, I'm just like, that ain't no chicken. That ain't no chicken. What are you up to, dude? What are you up to? What does it do?
Where your feet at, Blue
'Cause
Man?
It was
What does
during
it
the training
mean?
area, I thought. Yeah.
Anyway. Well, the other thing is, this book was a lot better than I remember, or this story was a lot better than I remember it being. I've noticed that about each of the short stories. I read the short stories and I'm like, okay, that was cool. And then I go back and read it with the Cosmere more in mind, and I'm just like, oh my gosh, that was awesome. So, I'm looking forward to finding out more about it. Now, in addition to the live episodes of the show that stream on twitch.tv/Innkeeper's Table every 2 weeks on Monday nights at 7:30 p.m. Pacific Time, 10:30 p.m. Eastern, our listeners can find our videos on YouTube or the audio versions of the podcast on iTunes, Spotify, and any other podcast app that you like by searching for Cosmere Studies. You can also follow us and contact us through Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook under the profile @Cosmere Studies. Now, just as a reminder, our next episode is going to be a patron call-in show in celebration of finishing up a year of podcasting, where you can call in and talk with us on stream. So don't miss the live stream on March 18th, 2019. We are looking forward to geeking out with you about the Cosmere. But until then, on behalf of Amy, Jordan, and myself, Thanks for listening, and remember, there's always another secret.